Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey through the transcontinental trade routes that changed the course of world economic history. We will talk about two of the most influential routes, the Silk Road and the Spice Route. These routes not only connected continents, but also fostered cultural, technological, and economic exchange on an unprecedented scale. Let's start with the Silk Road. This vast network of paths stretched from China to the Mediterranean, covering thousands of miles. It wasn't just silk being transported, but also other valuable goods like spices, jewels, and scientific knowledge. On the other hand, the spice route focused on the Indian Ocean, linking Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and Europe. Spices like cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg were so valuable that they were often used as currency. These routes were not just avenues of trade, but bridges between civilizations. They facilitated the exchange of ideas, cultures, and religions. Imagine caravans of camels crossing deserts, ships sailing through treacherous seas, all in search of wealth and new opportunities. The Silk Road was not just a trade route, but a complex network that connected civilizations. It began during the Han Dynasty in China and linked the East with the West, facilitating an unprecedented cultural and economic exchange. Silk, the star product, was highly valued in Europe. However, it wasn't just silk that traveled these paths. Porcelain, tea, and paper were also exported from China, while gold, silver, and precious stones flowed to the east. The route also allowed the spread of ideas, technologies, and religions. Buddhism, for example, spread from India to China and other Asian countries through these routes. Merchants traveling the Silk Road faced numerous challenges, from extreme weather conditions to bandits and diseases. Despite these obstacles, the promise of wealth and new opportunities drove them to keep going. The spice route was another major axis of transcontinental trade. Unlike the Silk Road, which was primarily overland, the spice route was maritime. This route connected Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and Europe across the Indian Ocean. Spices were so valuable that they were used as currency in some regions. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and pepper were among the most sought-after products. These spices were prized not only for their flavor, but also for their preservative and medicinal properties. The route spurred the construction of great naval empires and encouraged exploration. Portugal and Spain, in particular, became naval powers, seeking new routes and monopolizing the spice trade. This maritime trade also enabled the exchange of nautical technologies and geographic knowledge, accelerating the age of exploration. Through the spice route, cultures intertwined, knowledge was shared, and alliances were forged. This route not only enriched those involved in trade, but also promoted the development of port cities and coastal economies. Beyond the trade of goods, transcontinental routes like the Silk Road and the Spice Route served as channels of cultural and technological exchange. Through these paths, civilizations shared knowledge that transformed the world. The Silk Road facilitated the transmission of technologies such as gunpowder and the compass from China to Europe. Additionally, art and literature spread, introducing styles and techniques to new territories. Meanwhile, the Spice Route not only carried material goods, but also ideas and practices. Navigational knowledge, astronomy, and medical insights traveled with the merchants, enriching the cultures they encountered. The cities along these routes became multicultural hubs. Alexandria, Damascus, Baghdad, and Venice are examples of cities that flourished thanks to transcontinental trade. In these centers, people from diverse backgrounds exchanged ideas, religions, and technologies, creating a cultural melting pot. These interactions not only transformed societies of the time, but also laid the foundation for the modern world. The spread of technologies and knowledge through these routes helped spark the Renaissance and the scientific revolution in Europe, showcasing the transformative power of transcontinental trade. Transcontinental trade routes not only facilitated the exchange of goods and cultures, but also had a profound economic impact on the regions they spanned. These routes promoted the development of cities and entire regions, creating prosperous economic hubs. The Silk Road, for instance, transformed cities like Xi'an in China, Samarkand in Uzbekistan, and Constantinople in Turkey into major trade centers. These cities became meeting points for merchants from all over the world, fostering economic and cultural growth. The spice route had a similar effect on port cities like Malacca, Goa, and Venice. The spice trade not only enriched individual merchants, but also filled the coffers of the cities and nations that controlled these routes. The control of these trade routes often led to conflicts and wars, as empires and nations sought to monopolize the wealth generated by them. These routes also encouraged economic specialization. Entire regions began focusing on the production of specific goods that were in demand in other parts of the world. For example, China specialized in the production of silk and porcelain, while the islands of Indonesia became the main suppliers of spices. The constant flow of goods and wealth along these routes spurred the development of more complex financial systems, including the establishment of banks and credit systems. These financial innovations facilitated large-scale trade, allowing merchants to operate across multiple regions without the need to carry large amounts of gold or silver. Transcontinental trade routes not only boosted trade and the economy, but also inspired great explorers to seek out new routes and territories. Navigators like Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, and Vasco da Gama played crucial roles in the expansion of global trade. Marco Polo, through his detailed accounts of traveling along the Silk Road, introduced Europe to the wonders of the East. His tales of the wealth and sophistication of China inspired other adventurers and merchants to explore these distant lands. Christopher Columbus, in his attempt to find a shorter route to the East Indies, accidentally discovered America in 1492. Although he did not find the spices he was searching for, his journey marked the beginning of a new era of exploration and colonization. Vasco da Gama, on the other hand, succeeded in finding a direct sea route to India around Africa in 1498. This discovery allowed Portugal to establish a monopoly over the spice trade, making it one of the wealthiest nations in Europe. These explorers not only expanded the geographical knowledge of the world, but also facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures on an even larger scale, further cementing the importance of transcontinental trade routes. Transcontinental trade routes were not only channels for the exchange of goods and technologies, but also for the spread of religions and philosophies. Along these paths, religious beliefs spread and mingled, transforming the societies in which they took root. Buddhism, for example, spread from India along the Silk Road to China, Korea, Japan, and other parts of Asia. Buddhist monks traveled with merchants, bringing sacred scriptures and relics with them. The Silk Road became a spiritual as well as a commercial corridor, facilitating the construction of monasteries and temples along its route. Islam also spread through the trade routes. Muslim traders played a crucial role in spreading Islam to sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. As they traveled, they built mosques and established Islamic communities, spreading the teachings of the Quran. Christianity, through Jesuit missions and other missionaries, also expanded along these routes. Trading cities became meeting points where different religions coexisted and influenced each other. These religious connections through trade routes not only promoted intercultural understanding and tolerance, but also led to religious syncretism, where elements of different beliefs fused into new forms of spiritual practice. Although transcontinental trade routes offered enormous opportunities, they were also filled with challenges and dangers. Merchants who ventured along these paths faced a variety of obstacles that tested their endurance and determination. One of the biggest challenges was the terrain. Caravans traveling along the Silk Road had to cross vast deserts, high mountains, and inhospitable regions. Extreme weather, from the scorching heat of the Taklamakan Desert to the intense cold of the Tian Shan Mountains, posed constant risks for merchants and their goods. The spice route, on the other hand, presented maritime dangers. Sailors faced violent storms, unpredictable currents, and pirates. Navigation in the Indian Ocean required advanced skills and deep knowledge of the stars and ocean currents. In addition to natural dangers, merchants also had to deal with bandits and raiders. Caravans were attractive targets due to the high value of their cargo. Cities and nations could also impose taxes and tolls, increasing the cost and risk of trade. Despite these challenges, merchants continued their work, driven by the promise of profit and the thirst for adventure. These brave individuals not only transported goods, but also connected worlds and cultures, leaving a lasting legacy in history. The transcontinental trade routes left a lasting legacy that is still felt today. Through centuries of exchange, these routes not only transformed the economies of the connected regions, but also laid the foundations for the globalized world we live in today.